Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, SAP with IK. Hope you're all doing good. So today's topic will be on the comparison between the MRP that we have on the classic side. I'm going to say the ECC system versus the advanced MRP Live that we have on the S4HANA system, which is also called as the MRP Live. So we'll try to evaluate what are the parameters that we are going to compare and where do we see significant changes in the latest versions of the MRP. So let's get started. So now to start with, we do have a few columns in this slide. As you see, the first one is the feature that we'll be comparing with the classic MRP and the S4HANA MRP or the MRP Live. And also on the other column, we have the supporting notes or the knowledge base articles pertaining to this particular feature. So let's start with the first feature, which is the MRP list. So in the MRP list, as you know, in the classic MRP or the transactions MD01, 02 or 03, we do have the option to generate an MRP list, right? So this MRP list is basically the output of the MRP run where you can actually see what all materials have been part of the planning run. But whereas when we come to the MRP Live with the transaction MD01N, and this is only available in the S4HANA systems. So here there are no MRP list created because the MRP list were basically intended for checking the MRP result. So here we do have the automatic output coming out of the MD01N in case there are any issues. When we compare this feature of the MRP list with what we have in the MD01N or the MRP Live, so here we will not have the MRP list created. But because the MRP lists are basically the snapshots of the material supply and the demand situation during the last MRP run. So in the SAP S4HANA systems, the output of the MRP Live will provide you a list in case we have any errors related to the master data. So let's say you do not have a BOM or maybe the material is blocked for any reason. So these kind of messages will be shown in the output after the MRP Live has been executed. So here in the S4HANA system, the MD04 or the stock requirement list can be executed for that particular material, and there itself you can see the output of the MRP Live run. And there is another transaction MD underscore MRP underscore force underscore classic. So this transaction basically shows you the complete list of master data issues like I previously mentioned. And in the SAP S4HANA, there is actually no need for the outdated MRP list, right? So now let's take a look in the SAP system where this MRP list feature is actually available. So let me go to the SAP system. So this particular screen in the default theme or the signature theme of SAP, this is the ECC system where I'm showing you the transaction of MD02, the single item multi-level. So here we do have the MRP list executed after the MRP run. As you can see here, the creation of MRP list. So here we choose these options of what is available in the standard, like should we have an MRP list or should we not have an MRP list, or should it be based on the exception messages encountered during the MRP run. But whereas if we go to the MRP Live, so this particular theme of the red color, this is the S4HANA system. So here we do not have any option related to the MRP list generation, right? Now going back to the slide, and here are a few supporting notes provided by SAP and also the knowledge base articles if you want to know more information about the MRP list feature when compared with the classic and the advanced version of MRP Live. And the next comes the scope of planning. So this scope of planning, it is used basically to combine multiple plans into one single scope of planning and then execute the MRP run. So this is basically used in the transaction MD01 in case of the classic MRP, so that a complete set of plans, let's say you have like around 10 plans, and these 10 plans you want to execute MRP at the same time with the same set of MRP parameters, right? So we are not it is not actually required to create multiple background jobs or multiple MRP runs based on these plans, right? So you can actually consolidate these or maybe add these 10 plans into one scope of planning, and then we are going to create only one background job for the MRP run related to this scope of planning, right? So this is what we use in the uh, classic MRP run. And when we come to this MRP Live, the scope of planning is basically not supported. Why? Because the MRP Live itself can support the MRP execution for various plans, like multiple plans at one go, right? And the MRP area is also being part of the planning run by default. So now let's go back to this SAP screen to see where the scope of planning is. So this is the ECC system, the classic MRP, and the scope of planning, like I said, it is available in MD01 transaction, and here is where we actually enter the scope of planning and then maintain these parameters, right? But in the same way, if I go to the MRP Live, so here we do not see that option to provide the scope of planning. Why? Because we do have these options to provide multiple plans, right? And we can create it as a single variant, right? So this is one feature. And then we have the creation indicators. So the creation indicators, so in the classic MRP, we basically have the creation indicators like the MRP control parameters, let's say to create a purchase requisition and schedule line creation, so on. And we also have these options to, to either create a purchase requisition or you need a planned order based on the planning horizon. So when we come to this MRP Live, the MRP Live, it always creates purchase requisitions for externally procured item, and it basically sources the procurement type from the corresponding material master. And if the procurement type is F or procured externally, then it will always create a purchase requisition, right? And if there is any valid schedule agreement created for that material or maybe a source list has been created, then it is going to create schedule lines accordingly, right? And now coming to the procurement type E or the in-house manufacturing scenario, the MRP Live, it basically creates a planned order for in-house manufactured materials, right? And also we do have the supporting KBA and the note provided if you need more information related to the creation indicators. Now going back to the, this is the MRP Live, the S4 version. So here we do not have any creation options, but if we go to this, the classic version of MRP, we do have these options, whether you want to create a purchase requisition or a planned order, or maybe a purchase requisition in the opening period. And then you have the schedule lines, create MRP lists, and also the planning mode, the scheduling type, so on and so forth. So all these values that we see here are part of the MRP control parameters. But whereas if we go to the MRP Live, we do not have such planning parameters as you see here. So we only have few of it, which is the scheduling type, and the planning mode, right? Now again, coming back to the slide. And the next feature that we are going to compare is basically the opening period. So here in the classic MRP, we have this create purchase requisition option in the MRP control parameters, where you can actually create purchase requisitions in the opening period. So the materials or the demand that has been planned outside of the opening period, they will have a planned order created in this classic MRP. But whereas in the MRP Live or the MD01N, we do not have that option to basically consider the opening period. So where do we see this opening period? It is basically at the control parameter level. So here the create purchase requisition option. This is the option that I was talking about, like to create purchase requisitions in the opening period or not. Okay. And the next one is the planning horizon. So in the planning horizon, in the classic MRP, we have the MRP control parameter as the processing key as any TPL. But whereas the MRP live, it does not support the planning horizon, right? And these particular MRP control parameters, let me show you in the classic MRP. So here we have the processing key. So in the processing key, we have NETCCH, NETPL, and NEUPL, right? But whereas if we take a look at the MRP live, we do not have those options to basically select the type of planning like we see here, right? The processing keys. And the next one is, we covered on the, the processing key. And here we are talking about the processing key NETPL, which is basically the planning run at the planning horizon level. So this option NETPL, it is not available in the MRP live, but because it actually works similar to the NEUPL when we compare it with the classic MRP. So the indicator regenerative planning in the MRP live actually replaces this particular processing key. So to show you, so here we have the regenerative planning. So if you want to use the NETPL function, then you can actually activate this checkbox, the regenerative planning. Now going to the next slide. The next feature to compare is the scheduling mode. So in the classic MRP, we do have the scheduling modes, whether to run MRP based on the lead time scheduling, or you want to use the basic date scheduling, right? And we already did several videos on the MRP run. So basically the lead time scheduling is something that sources the lead time coming from the master recipe or the routing of that particular material. But in case if you are using the basic date scheduling, then the in-house production time that we have in the material master will be considered into the planning run. And comparing this feature with the S4HANA or the MRP live, so here we only have the rate-based and the rough cut routings are maintained in the production version. So in that case, we will have the exception message MD425, which is basically for the scheduling exception message saying that the master data is basically inconsistent, right? And now to compare this with SAP, so here we have the scheduling option. A determination of basic dates. This is to pick the lead time from the material master, and the second one is for the lead time coming from the recipe or the routing. The same way, if we go to the S4HANA, so here we have these two options, the determination of basic dates and the lead time scheduling. But we do have an exception saying that in case if the rate based and the rough cut routings are maintained in the production version, then we will have an exception message, right? And it also says that the detailed scheduling is basically supported in the MRP live. And then we have the planning mode. So the planning mode, we have three options in the classic MRP. One is basically to adapt the planning data or the normal mode. And the second one is to re-explode BOM and routing. And the third one is basically to delete and recreate the planning data. But when we take a look at the MRP live, the planning mode 2, which is re-explode BOM and routing, is not available. But whereas the planning mode 1 to adopt the planning data, it works different from what we see in the classic MRP. So for planning mode 1, either 100% use reuse or delete and recreate option is going to work. And in case you would like to enhance this based on your requirement, then you can use this AMDP body pph underscore MRP underscore reuse underscore body. So the AMDP body can be used in order to tweak the standard behavior of this planning mode functionality. But before you make any change, I suggest you to go through the notes and the related knowledge base articles that you see in this particular slide. Yeah. So now to show the same in SAP. So as you can see here, the planning mode 1 and 3 are basically available, and we do not see planning mode 2 in the S/4HANA system. And when we compare it with the classic MRP, we do have the option 2 also available. 1, 2, and 3, right? And the next slide. And the next one, the next feature that we are going to compare here is the simulation mode. So the MD02 transaction, it basically has two process control parameters like the simulation mode and display results prior to saving the simulate run, right? But whereas in MD03, there is a process control parameter like to display the results prior to saving, right? But whereas in MRP Live, we don't have this option available. So MD02 and MD03, you have this simulation mode option available. So here we are in MD01. And you do not see that option over here, right? But whereas if I go to MD02, so here we have these two options like display results prior to saving and the simulation mode. So these options are basically used, let's say you want to run MRP and see how the procurement proposals are created before you actually run the MRP, right? So for that option, you can actually choose these two options so that it will be in the simulation mode, and it will also show you the output of what it is exactly going to create after you run the actual MRP run. I mean, in simpler way, I could say that this is to run in the test mode, okay? But whereas in the S/4HANA or the MRP Live, we do not have that option to simulate the MRP run. And the next one is the BOM components. So here for the BOM components, the MD02 transaction, it is basically used to run the MRP for the single item, but at multi-level, right? So here we also have this control parameter, also plan unchanged components. But whereas in MRP Live, here we do have another indicator called as the BOM components in case we would like to plan the BOM components for that particular product as well, right? So this option must be checked. And also the indicator also plan unchanged components is added into the MRP Live through this particular SAP note 2584201. And if in case you are using the engineering change management for the master data to manage the bill of material, then you are suggested to check this knowledge base article 2611243 to take a look at the limitations and also the suggestions provided by SAP. So now if we compare this feature in SAP, yeah, so here we have also plan unchanged components, right? So here is what we see in the classic MRP, but whereas in the MRP Live, we have this particular option, like changed BOM components also. So usually whenever you run MRP Live, what typically I do is to check all these options over here. And next, the MPS run, the master production scheduling. So here we use the transactions MD40, MD41, 42, and 43. So we use these separate transactions to run MPS, the master production scheduling, right? But whereas in the MRP Live, the MPS will also be included for where the materials are set as MPS related materials, right? So you don't need to use any other transaction to run MPS in one uh, using a set of transactions and MRP using a different set of transactions. So everything will be executed in the MRP live transaction itself or the MD01N. And next we have the stock transfer materials. So the stock transfer materials option that we have just seen in the MD01N transaction. So for that, the classic MRP it basically uses the scope of planning to plan both the supply plant and the receiving plant. So if we go to the classic MRP, we have the scope of planning right here. So if we enable this product group, then both the supplying plant and the receiving plant will be planned together based on the master data parameters. In case the material is intended to be stock transfer from plant A to plant B and it should be planned in both the plants, then we basically use this particular option. And whereas in the MRP live, we have this indicator, the stock transfer materials, as you have seen here, the stock transfer materials. This particular option, it basically allows you to control whether you want to plan the materials in the supplying plant or not during the MRP run. And next, the performance log. So basically, we do have these reports in the classic MRP, RMMDMONI and RMMDPERF. These two reports can be analyzed to basically check the performance of the MRP run. But whereas in the MRP live, we do have this new field as the name of the performance log. Let me show you that. So here we have the name of the performance log. So here you can enter your, your customized name as you need, so that the performance log will be displayed according to your name. So it could be your date, time, whatever it is you would like to enter it manually. And you also have another transaction MD underscore MRP underscore PERF LOG. So this transaction can be used to check the performance logs. And next we have the period lot sizing procedure. So in the classic MRP, the date of the earliest requirement of the planned order, for the planned material determines the start of the periods for grouping the requirements, right? So in case we are using the lot size procedure as periodic based lot sizing procedure, in that case, the earliest requirement date of the demands or the requirements that we have in that particular period will be considered as the start date of that particular period. But whereas in the MRP live on the S4HANA, the start of the periods is determined by the planning date of the MRP run. So these different requirements are basically grouped in classic MRP and MRP live on HANA. This means that depending on how the materials are planned, the planned orders or PRs could be created with different quantities and dates. So we've actually created, there is already a video made on the periodic lot sizing procedure in the channel. So if you're interested to know how this works, so please take a look from the playlist. And the next feature is the lot sizing procedure with the rounding value. So in the classic MRP, if the requirement quantity is lower than the minimum lot size that we maintain in the material master, then the minimum lot size will be considered into the planning and the proposals will be created based on that. But if it is higher than the minimum lot size, and the rounding value will be used. So here in the lot sizing procedure, there are two options. I mean, again, with the rounding value and without a rounding value, where we use a rounding profile, right? So this is how it works when we are using such lot sizing procedures. And here we are just talking about the requirement quantity versus the minimum lot size maintained in the material master. But whereas in MRP Live, in the MD01N transaction, so the MRP Live, it basically always, it considers the rounding value, even if the requirement is smaller than the minimum lot size. So the first priority will always be given to the rounding value in the MRP Live. And the next one is the MRP controller. So in the classic MRP, we can use this particular user exit M61X0001 to identify which materials are to be selected during the planning run based on the MRP controller code. But whereas in the MRP Live in MD01N, we do have the MRP controller and also the product group added by default in the MD01N transaction. So here the MRP controller is made available. So let's say you would like to execute MRP in a particular plant or maybe multiple plants for a specific MRP controller. So then you have this option to enter the MRP controllers manually and then create it as a variant. So the MRP run will always be executed in that particular plant and only for the selected MRP controllers. Okay. So yeah, and then we have the user exit key. So here again, we are talking about the user exit that we have in the classic MRP. And it basically influences like which materials are to be selected in the planning run. And whereas in the MRP Live, the user exit is not supported. Why? Because we have these several options where you can provide various plans, materials, product groups, and MRP controllers, right? So all these can be categorized under one single variant, and then you can schedule a background job for it. And we do have this body, the MRP underscore dispatcher underscore body, which is basically used to implement your own custom logic if you need something else that is not available with the standard options we have in MRP Live. And for the restrictions that we have in the classic MRP versus the MRP Live, I suggest you to please go through this particular note 1914010. This basically talks about the usage of the production versions in the plan independent requirements. So earlier in the classic version of the MRP Live, whenever you the classic version of MRP, whenever we create a planned independent requirement or a PIR in MD61, we have this option of entering the production version for that particular material. Let's say you have like multiple production version, and in this particular demand plan, you would like to assign only one specific production version. So in the classic MRP, it is basically supported during the planning run. So whatever production version you assign in the MD61 or the 62 screen, so that production version will be included into the planning run. But whereas in the MRP Live, the direct usage of the production versions in PR is not basically supported, right? So I recommend you to always go through these notes if you need more information or maybe a detailed understanding of these feature comparison, because I just did it at a high level so that I can cover most of the major features comparing the classic MRP and the MRP Live in S/4HANA. So that's all for today. So we'll meet again in our next video. Until then, take care.